Thank you, Todd. Thank you. Again, a great turnout. I appreciate so many of you all being here. An elected official. It's great to do this town hall with State Senator Wahab, which she first got elected. She told me about her passion on affordable housing in our offices that been collaborating on an issue that is by far the biggest one that comes up in our district. I was talking to a young person today who is from Sunnyvale, and she said that her family has rented a house in Sunnyvale for the past number of years, and they had gone to school here, and now doesn't know if they can afford to stay in Sunnyvale anymore because of the increase in rents. That this is a story that we are hearing all across the district of people who can't afford rent, people who can't afford to pay their mortgage on the houses, people who can't afford their kids to come back into the communities that they grew up in. And as the folks say, from Cupertino, there are studies showing that the teachers love teaching there, but don't anticipate staying there because the housing costs. It's also driving away our teachers, it's driving away some of the service professionals, and so we need to address that big challenge. And I am very much in the camp of having more affordable housing be built, building more units of affordable housing. I am for stopping Wall Street from buying up single-family homes. I introduced a bill to stop Wall Street Landlord Act to do exactly that. I think we need to have more assistance, cash assistance for people before they get evicted. New Jersey has tried that, and it is one of the single biggest policies that could prevent homelessness before people get evicted, to provide some cash assistance to make sure that they have vetting rights. And I believe that in a market that is artificially distorted, because we have an artificial shortage, you should not have rent going up higher than inflation. That if we had a perfect market and we had more housing, then that's fine. But right now you have a distorted market where the tenants are not getting a fair treatment. And so we need to make sure that the rents aren't going up higher than inflation. And this is what the president has talked about in a rent cap. These are some of the federal policies that we've been working on. But I want to hear from all of you about what you think is important on affordable housing and what we can be doing for this community in our district. And I want to hear, of course, from our State Senator Aisha Wahab and some of the initiatives that she's been working on at the state level. So thank you, Aisha, for co-hosting this and being here in your leadership.
Senator Aisha Wahab. Thank you. First and foremost, I just want to thank the city and the school district for really allowing us to be in your space. And I want to thank Congressman Khanna as well as his staff for working with us to set up this town hall. First and foremost, I just want to say that housing is one of the biggest priorities for almost every single family. And I often want to highlight why this was important to me. Our fastest growing demographic within the unsheltered community is our seniors. Like, really think about that. Our fastest growing demographic entering the workforce is our seniors. Okay. Our fastest growing population that is victims of substance abuse is also seniors, right? And we're seeing the trend rise, and just in the last couple of days, I've actually talked to a lot of subject matter experts on this. And I worry a lot because, as my parents are aging, as we are seeing the housing prices, we're seeing inflation, we're seeing a lot of different issues. And we often hear in this state of California that we're the 5th largest economy in the world. What does that mean when the quality of life is not the 5th best quality of life in the world, right? And so what are we doing with all this funding? And I kind of just wanted to provide some legislative updates and some wins. I am a freshman amongst the state senate, a year and a half elected, and I will say that I'm very proud to be in leadership. I'm the assisted majority leader in the Senate, And I'm also thank you. The kids and public safety from a policy perspective. And we're tackling retail, we're tackling the car break-ins and much more. In fact, I have a bill that makes organized retail theft a permanent crime. And that is now moving along, and we're hoping by the end of this year it's signed by the governor, and we can, really tackle some of the other issues as well. And I'm also the chair of Budget Subcommittee 5, which covers transportation, it covers our corrections, it covers our judiciary, it covers labor, it covers a number of different things. But the few things that I can do directly for the location here in the district is secure funding. And we've been able to secure funding for a number of different cities as well as the county, specifically to prioritize funding for real projects that you guys are working on, that so many of our local electeds are working on, that we can kind of uplift. So from Hayward, a stacked youth center, we've given several $1 billion to them. The city of San Jose, a number of millions of dollars, safer walking and biking infrastructure, even our state special schools, $2 million. And I will say in Fremont, we are home to the state's School of the Deaf and School of the Blind. And oftentimes they are overlooked just because they do not have enough advocacy. And if you really think about it, they are the entire state School of the Deaf and School of the Blind. So they recruit students for a community school. And I will say that they are paid, their teachers and their staff are paid less than Fremont Unified School District staff. So we have a number of different issues in our district that we're trying to address. And I'll go to the next slide. And as far as housing, we were able to help secure roughly $45 million in regards to the California Strategic Growth Council and California Department of Community Development, which basically transforms a vacant lot into about 128 affordable homes in Fremont. And I will say in our district, from Hayward, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, Milpitas, and northern part of San Jose, the average home is $1.4 million. Great. And the starter homes, the townhomes and the condos and things like that, is roughly about $700,000. Now, my frustration, and I share this often, is that when we talk about who's really responsible for housing, land use issues are a city responsibility, first and foremost. And the state really tries to prioritize streamlining things and, holding people accountable to, hey, we will give you more money if you develop more affordable housing. Cities will, and I serve on city council, will say that it's the developer that is responsible for affordable housing. And the developer will say that we follow the city's direction of what they require either of those things. So it's a little game of hot potato on who's really responsible for affordable housing. But this past week, I was at a senior facility in Fremont, and they were asking for rent control.
Impact fees.
In Fremont, they were asking, what can we do for rent control? And their rent goes up 7% year over year. People who have union jobs do not get a 5% increase year over year, let alone on a fixed income. To meet that 7%, it's impossible. There are people who say, move out of the cost of living area that's too high for them. This is where their doctors are, this is where their families are, this is where their grandkids are, this is where their loved ones are, this is where the jobs are. So I try to emphasize affordable housing as much as possible because we need to make sure that we, as much as possible, coordinate with every stakeholder that we can. Next slide.
Twice exist to the insurance and
I genuinely want to prioritize some of the things we're working on. Health and aging is really important to me, as well as mental health. And, obviously we've talked about artificial intelligence, and I've worked in tech, so I know it's important. But the one bill that I do want to prioritize to everybody here is called the SMILE Act, SB 980. It allows for Medi-Cal recipients to be able to get a dental implant. A dental implant. Right now, that is not covered. And there are concerns there because you can get your teeth removed. You have nothing to replace it. And this is a big bill. It's a bipartisan effort, bicameral. Both houses support it. Even in a budget deficit, it has been prioritized. It's the most expensive bill that came out of the Senate. We're very proud of that. Continue to working to move things forward. We're going to move on to the next slide. So I mentioned public safety, and there are deep concerns we have in regards to public safety. For example, I did reference the organized theft and making organized theft a permanent crime. And I want to highlight that I served on a fentanyl working group as well as prioritized the Safer California plan that we pushed out, a bipartisan effort from the Senate. And we have roughly 14 bills that cover organized retail theft, that cover fentanyl, that cover significant other issues. For example, when we are seeing that people are lighting a fire in one part of a major retail store to cause a distraction to steal from some other place. And we don't have enough law enforcement to be able to really tackle some of the issues. So you guys have heard in the news that there has been an increased presence in Oakland, an increased presence in the East Bay. And the reason for that is because they're not targeting one city. They're targeting multiple cities at the same time. And I have some colleagues that have talked about Oakland doesn't have retail because it doesn't have a Louis Vuitton or an Apple store. But my parents were small business owners. Those small business owners really struggled with the high cost of insurance, the replacement of goods, and much more, even taking a couple of days off to replace a door or something like that. So as much as possible, we're trying to provide a balanced approach to tackle retail theft. And we can move on to the next slide. And this is where it becomes fun. We want to answer questions from you all, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of an update on what we're doing at the state level. And I'm sure the Congressmember and myself are very happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Mr. Wahab, or what things from and so I'll just bring your brothers to have good yes. Okay, and to being starting work with if right here with our first question.
Something that package.
Congressman, we have Richard from Sunnyvale.
Yes.
On
Yes, it's on. Any please. Okay, thank you. Some of the cities are trying to restrict housing, new housing and remodeled housing to only have electric appliances. And so they're trying to get this gas out of the construction of homes. Berkeley put an ordinance in to do that, and that there's been a problem. And so all the cities down here in the South Bay have put this electrification on hold. Is there something that either you could talk to about how we can proceed with improving climate while we're also looking at affordable housing? I appreciate that, Rich, and I think that the important thing is that we need to be providing the incentives to do that. So with the Inflation Reduction Act, the approach was that we would provide tax credits, grants to facilitate solar, wind, geothermal, and we should be doing the same thing at a federal level for people building affordable housing that it's good for the climate. So if they have the electrification and they're moving in that direction, just like we've done for electric stoves, because I always make fun of that, but it's not a mandate. It's just incentives to do that, and we should be providing the same kind of incentives to cities to be building affordable housing that is good for the climate.
I think that the problem from a state perspective, and I will say again, this is local issues. We have not seen a statewide ordinance or law being introduced regarding this. When I was on city council in Hayward, we also tried to push this. there are a couple of concerns. Number one is that we are not ready for 100% electric. We've seen that, pure and simple, right? You see the outage in LA County. LA County is one of the biggest economic hubs of the world, let alone in California. And we are seeing more and more that the original cost, for example, for gas is a little bit more expensive. And that was the incentive for developers, is to introduce the electric version over the gas version. But long-term, gas is actually cheaper than the electric utilities and so forth. And that was a big debate in my city because the cost of living and so forth, the average median income is, at the time, was around $65,000 to $85,000 for a family of four. We have to prioritize the environment, right? We know that we have to do that, but we have to do it with balance and redundancy. People don't talk enough about redundancy, and redundancy is very simple, is that if you have one path that you're moving on, and if that fails, you have a second path that you can easily slide into, and we have not set up that infrastructure, right? That's the honest truth. So I actually have a bill right now. So many of us are hearing that we have to buy EV vehicles, right? Electric vehicles. And the reality is that if you live in a multifamily complex like myself as a renter, where do you charge your vehicle, right? Ford is making an F-150 pickup truck, the #1 selling car in America, all electric. Who buys it, right? That's the people who rent, and they can't charge them. And so you're seeing a little bit of a, going forward, one step forward, one step back. And so the bill that I introduced basically says that the infrastructure we have today, gas stations, should have an electric charging station as well as a hydrogen station. I'm not betting on the technology, I'm betting on the infrastructure. And those are the types of policies we want to push for.
Good evening. We also have questions that were submitted online. And our next question comes from Darren from San Jose. And his question is, what are the immediate and long-term plans to support housing for low-income and homeless residents?
Well, I think the long-term plan is one we need to do at the federal level, what the president tried to do with Build Back Better, which is provide billions of dollars of funding to local cities that are going to engage in building more affordable housing and that are going to be able to build that near areas of transit. Unfortunately, that did not pass the Inflation Reduction Act, but I'm hopeful in the next Congress, with hopefully a Democratic president, that President Harris, that we will be able to pass that and actually get billions of dollars of housing assistance to local cities so that they can then build affordable housing and have the resources to build the schools and to build the infrastructure that's going to be needed as they have more residents in the community.
I think that there's a number of efforts. Right now we have a statewide housing plan with the objectives of keeping Californians in their homes, and obviously it's to produce affordable housing and much more. We did have a little bit of a slowdown regarding COVID, and the state of California actually allowed, and we pushed this, to purchase all the Motel 6s. And people don't realize that, right? So the Motel 6s operate as where we can have lower income housing for those individuals temporarily and potentially even hopefully permanently to house people, get them off the street as soon as possible, and much more. I want to really highlight that housing is a multi-pronged effort. And when we talk about it from a policy perspective, the big dogs in the room is real estate, developers, labor, and the conversation has always been on construction. But the conversation also needs to move into the other prongs, which is keeping people housed longer, keeping people able to purchase their home, number one, but also if they are renting, that they can rent for long term. And so President Biden actually released an effort in regards to, he wants to see a rent cap at 5% nationwide. And earlier this year, I had the opportunity to speak to Vice President Kamala Harris, and she even mentioned housing. When we met with Pete Buttigieg, who's Secretary of Transportation, he even mentioned housing. And I was so happy to constantly hear housing because at the end of the day, we could build, but we're not building affordable, right? These are $700,000 homes who can afford that, right? A teacher can't, right? People coming out of college can't. How do you compete with a $120,000 down payment, all cash, especially in the Bay Area? I'm the only renter in the Senate. So I really try to prioritize that if you can purchase a car and know what your payment is for the next 5 years, month over month, year over year, you should be able to do that when you rent. You should be able to know what you make, right? So I never tried really hard, and I will say that, you know, honestly, some of these efforts fall on deaf ears. But I think that, you know, as the Congress member said, that, you know, we have an ability to move this forward, and it's not just a California issue. It is a nationwide issue. We are seeing people struggling. We are seeing people literally not able to survive in other states that are, you know, cheaper to live in, right? So as much as possible, we need to prioritize the other voices besides just winners, because when we're talking about our kids and our grandkids and our single moms, they deserve the dignity of staying in place as well. Thanks.
Hello, Joseph from Milpitas has a question regarding housing units.
Is in regard to the balance of housing units, do you have any data on how many units the state of California lost with the eviction moratorium?
I don't have that data directly on me now, not at this moment. I'm sure our staff can kind of do some digging if you want to provide their email or something like that.
And stories.
I have a question from Diane in Richmond for both members.
Thank you. You know, affordable housing, we all talk about the lack of affordable housing. And one of the things when you talk about it, we talk about first responders, we talk about teachers, we talk about our service people. I never hear us talk about those that are disabled or disadvantaged. They also need that kind of housing. So how do we get that to be part of the equation when we start talking about the future and ensuring that we have opportunities for everybody who needs housing?
And it's an excellent point. And unfortunately, too many people are also now just have disability or suffer from, or was it on? That's an excellent point. And unfortunately, too many people who are unhoused suffer from the disability or suffer from often a health issue, and we aren't addressing their needs and as well as the housing. A lot of times it's not just about giving people housing, it's about giving them the services that they need to be fully functional in a society. And, you know, all of us have had moments in our lives usually where we're just a degree away from either going into a depression or anxiety or hardship. I mean, there's very few people who haven't had struggle in life. And so we have to have the empathy that when people are in a situation that they either have, that they're unhoused, or if they are in a place where they have a disability, or if they're in a place where they need help for services, that we're providing not just the housing, but the full wraparound services, and that we're helping them also be part of a community and contributing. And the disabled community has to very much be centered in the conversations. And I agree with you that too often it's an afterthought, and I appreciate you raising it. Rick, just real quick.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I don't know where the words coming from, so I apologize. I did want to highlight that last year, Governor Newsom signed my bill into law, SB 555, and it is one of the first in the nation social housing bills that plans for 1.4 million stable, affordable homes for Californians via public, nonprofit, and cooperative housing production. Yes. AC is thoroughly working, housing department in the state of California is working with us to kind of prioritize exactly what we want. And the priority was moderate, low, and extremely low income housing. It was not market rate or above market rate. That's doing fine, right? Almost every single city is building market rate and above market rate housing. One of the key components of social housing and the work that I've been doing is to prioritize vulnerable communities. This is our aging population. This is our disabled population, often hand in hand, especially as people age. Including people like my own father that, after a kidney transplant and being legally blind and diabetes and so forth affecting them, getting our apartment ADA compliant, right? Being on that first floor, making sure that the shower has a handle, things like that people, again, as the council member stated, is often overlooked. One of the things that I've been working with a lot is the long-term care ombudsman, right? And one of the things that we've been trying to prioritize is even seniors in skilled nursing facilities and much more, people that need 24/7 care, people that need a little bit more help. But then also the state of California has a housing for all ages and stages plan. And that specifically is to kind of prioritize the types of communities that we're trying to create, dependent on age, disability, even, climate friendly and disaster friendly, right? Which we also have not pushed. So as much as possible, we're trying to make sure that we have some sustainability in our models moving forward.
My apologies for jumping in before. I did want to introduce a couple of electeds that have come in earlier from the Evergreen Community College District, Trustee Tony Alexander. Teresa Cox. And our hometown here of Milpitas Mayor Carmen Woodcock.
Thank you so much, Tom. We also have another question that was submitted online. And this person is a resident from San Jose and Fremont, and they want updates on ADUs as a part of the solution to the housing crisis.
So accessory dwelling units, or in-law units, as some people refer to them, has been streamlined. For example, if your square footage of an ADU is less than 750 square feet, a lot of your utilities and connection fees and so forth from the cities are usually waived. However, I will state this, that to build an ADU ranges anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000, depending on what type of ADU you want, what area you live in, and so forth. There are available floor plans to create ADUs as well, but ADUs do not equate to affordable housing. They simply do not. There is no deed restriction, there is no rent restriction, and often ADUs, statistically, from what we have seen, and it's relatively new that we're seeing some of the data, is that one, there's not a lot being built, and they are being built for an office or a she shed or man cave for just extra space, or the few people that don't want to live with their in-laws but want to live close to their in-laws and things like that. So it's not necessarily student living or smaller families and things like that. So I really just don't want to put so much emphasis on ADUs as the end-all be-all, because it's not. So we still have a long way to go.
Representatives, I had Kate from Fremont question about landlord accountability.
Exactly, and it's for both of you. Just a general question for people I've heard in Section 8 housing. If the landlord won't fix the heater or they have other violations, which personnel, which city entities are responsible for holding those landlords accountable? It shouldn't fall on disabled elderly renters to make their landlords do the right thing. So I haven't seen the housing authority when it's agencies do any follow-up on landlord accountability. So Where should that lie? How can this be enforced?
Well, I appreciate that, and this is why we need a tenant's bill of rights in this country. And Corey Bush, who is a representative from St. Louis, has introduced a bill, which I'm a co-sponsor of, to do exactly that. That there should be certain due process before someone is evicted. You know, I heard a story of someone who was evicted and their personal belongings were tossed out onto the street. The basically few possessions that they had, that they weren't able to clear them in time, and so the landlord just threw them out. I mean, that is dehumanizing. And there has to be a basic rights that tenants have in terms of the maintenance, in terms of the upkeep, in terms of the rights on eviction, in terms of their personal property and not being able to destroy or just throw out that personal property. So we need a lot of reform of Section 8, including a wait list that is unfilled. And you have people going hundreds of miles away to get Section 8 and then using it in the jurisdiction in San Jose or other places to the wait list in some of these places. So we need to fully fund the Section 8 programs and have a tenant bill of rights that needs to pass the House and Senate and the President to sign.
Yes, fully agree. I will say that we like to have some resources in our town halls, and we do have a number of resources here. We have the California Department of Insurance here today. If the representative would like to stand up or lift their hand, sorry, I say. And then the Milpitas Housing Department, as well as Project Sentinel. Now, I want to say that these three resources, you guys can all come up to them a little bit later. It's very important to be able to ask your specific questions, if you have it personally, to the right people. Now, first and foremost, I want to say that holding landlords accountable has been very difficult. And from state laws to federal laws, we don't see it, right? And I have a bill right now that says that the housing authority of the county of Alameda needs to post certain data on its website, right? And we're seeing it in some other counties. We're not necessarily seeing it across the state. And they have written a letter in opposition. Just data transparency.
Yeah.
Let alone the fact that we cannot even tell who owns which property. How many properties does a single LLC own? How many evictions have they committed, right, and enacted? And do we have bad actors? And we had a bill that was moving through last year, the legislature, that had significant opposition. And this year we have Senator Durazo, who I'm co-authoring with, who introduced a bill that basically, tries it again, because there's not enough support in curbing that. From the single-family homes being purchased by investment firms, by algorithms that, when you see homes that are really cheap on Zillow being purchased immediately, there's local ordinances that are being pushed to curb that. Because the reality is we have to curb the greed at the top. That's the honest truth, and nobody wants to address it. And so as much as we struggle, and, Congressman Khanna is absolutely right. We saw the Supreme Court just release, a judgment that basically says that the homeless encampments can be cleared out. But then at the same time, I really want to prioritize the dignity of human beings. There's family photos in that. If you see the videos being, of the sweeps in San Francisco, it's really jarring and it's inhumane. And it's also, obviously, we know the encampments are a risk to public safety as well as a risk to public health. But there has to be a more dignified way taking care of the people that are the most vulnerable. These are veterans. These are our aging population. These are people with mental health issues and much more. So we have to do better.
Yeah.
Congressman Khanna, we have Helena from Palo Alto with Green Steel.
Hello, this is not housing related, but I got a question for Congressman Khanna. And I was reading recently about a new bill supporting the manufacturing of clean steel in the U.S., and I just wanted some clarification on what exactly makes clean steel.
I appreciate the question. I was just in Johnstown, and we've introduced a bill to bring modern steel to the United States. And modern steel generation will be with hydrogen or direct reduction iron. That is 1/6 of the carbon emissions as China, or most of the steel that is being manufactured outside the United States. And the Sierra Club endorsed the bill, as have a lot of climate groups. This is going to help bring good-paying jobs back to the deindustrialized parts of our country. It's going to have project labor agreements, so there are going to be good union jobs. And it's also going to have a much lower carbon footprint than the steel we're currently getting from China or Canada or other parts of the world. I'm in America to lead in this. Europe is currently leading, but there's no reason we can't put these modern steel plants in places that were deindustrialized.
We have one question submitted online from Paul in Stanislaus. What new policies are in place regarding building new homes?
Well, I think the question put what new policies are in place in terms of building new homes, and obviously that varies city to city. And each city has its own each city has its own jurisdictions. But I think what we can do, and I'll let Senator Wahab speak at the state level, but at the federal level, what we can do is provide funding to incentivize the building of more units. And we need to build probably 10 million units in the next 10 years across the United States. That should be our goal. And we should be funding the cities to help build with this affordable housing. We should be making it clear that that funding can be used to improve the infrastructure, improve the schooling, because a lot of cities balk at expanding housing supply with a fear that it's going to increase population, and so the federal government can incentivize that. And if we were to provide that kind of funding and make it clear that some of that has to be affordable for that area, then we start to solve this problem, because ultimately we need more units. But that's a longer-term solution. In the short term, we need the rents not going up at the rates they've been going up, because the building of housing is going to take years.
Definitely. We have to support that the control when locals are doing their part to having the development pipeline. And I will say that here in the Bay Area, we have been doing our part largely in the South Bay and East Bay. However, there are other parts of the state, including the extended Bay Area, that has not been developing. And the real reality is that we have been streamlining law after law, in fact, even eliminating some to incentivize development, density bonuses, and much more. In fact, California added about 123,000 housing units in 2022. And in 2023, we saw a little bit of a slight decline of 110,000 units. But the harsh reality to understand is that we actually are probably 1 million units behind what we actually need. And that's really, really hard. But what's not quantifiable right now, and at least in a very public way, is the fact that we're not building affordable housing. And it's not just about development. And in California, and especially in the Bay Area, they talk about infill development, transit-oriented development, all of these terms that people kind of hide behind to say that we're going to develop. But the reality is that we're moving further and further outside of the Bay Area to develop on sprawl, right? In sprawl, in places like Mountain House, right? In Tracy, in other places that we all know we have a loved one or a friend or a colleague or a coworker that has moved to because it's cheaper, but they still commute here because the jobs are still here, right? And for me, again, it goes back to the multifamily complexes of apartments and the fact that those are supposed to be affordable. And right now, some of those units here in the Bay Area are $3,000 a month. right? And as families move from home to home to home each year to get a cheaper rent or maintain their rent, their kid, who's potentially in school, is moving from school to school to school to school. And it's again about community. What are we doing, right? And my dad is the first to tell me that you guys have a very poor quality of life compared to me in the 70s. And I said, why? He goes, on a one salary household that was able to buy a small condo, 2 bedrooms, and buy a Trans Am, and go to Lake Tahoe, and have fun, and do this, and we can't do that. You know, so we're struggling, and it's not just the you know, single moms and so forth. It's your, you know, recent graduate. It's your person. I asked a coworker that I haven't seen in a year since being elected. I saw him at the mall, and I said, hey, how are you doing? Things like that. Are you and your wife purchasing a home? And he says, I think that dream has sailed away. He has 2 kids, and he says, I don't think we'll ever be able to buy a home in the Bay Area, let alone California. He said that his wife and him were thinking about, like, they retire, they move back to the Philippines or do something else, but they cannot make it. And he said, and we get paid well. And that's the sad reality, is we still can't compete. So we, again, still have a long way to go. It's from a federal way all the way down.
Hello, Robert from Milpitas has a question regarding transportation and affordable housing.
Thank you. I'd like to understand, because here we are in the Silicon Valley, one of the innovations of Silicon Valley is this concept of air taxis, which actually addresses some of the question or the comment that Senator raised about we're spread into places like Tracy and Mountain House. The concept of air taxis is basically electric flying helicopters, basically that seats 4 for a price of Uber, basically, can get you from Tracy into San Francisco or San Jose within 20 minutes. I guess my question is, since we're in Silicon Valley, from you guys' perspective, would you be supportive of finding solutions like that so that we can provide, hopefully, more affordable housing? Robert, I always like your creativity. Have the Jetsons come to life. And I'm supportive of any kind of technology. And if that's a viable technology, I don't rule it out. I mean, if we could have air taxis and do that in a way that's safe and innovative, of course we should look at that. But we shouldn't make that a substitute for building more affordable housing here in our communities. It's sort of like when people say, with climate, well, are you for fusion? I was like, yes, I am, but let's not wait for fusion to do solar, wind, and geothermal and hydros. So let's try all the new technologies. Let's try, of course, high-speed rail. I'm still a supporter of that. But let's also build affordable housing in our communities.
Definitely. I support technology, right? Again, we're in Silicon Valley, we want to move forward, but we also want to compete with the world, right? So California always talks about the 5th largest economy in the world, but we're also kind of stagnant in competing in some respects, right? If you travel around the world, you see high-speed rail as a commonplace, right? You see a lot more housing being developed, high-rises, within a year you see massive towns being created. And you just don't see that here in one of the wealthiest states in the world, as well as one of the most innovative places in the world, right? And to be completely frank with you all, I've heard about high-speed rail since I was in elementary. And I still don't see it, right? And so I'm very frustrated talking in the state legislature, and I want to highlight this because I used to work in technology, and the Senate still does everything by cake doesn't. Okay? So this is the very first year we have an iPad. I just really want to highlight that because what we're working with, right? And that was largely, I was the pilot mantis for that, right? But one of the things that we keep seeing is that the buckets of money from the federal level as well as the state level, gets picked up. And one of the things that I tried to do this past year with Senator Weiner was transit consolidation, right? In our 9 Bay Area counties, we have 27 transit agencies. And these are the formal agencies with the body and so forth, right? We're not talking about Uber, we're not talking about all the other modes of transportation. And that was pushed back. And in fact, when we wanted to do the assessment, we had pushback saying, don't include technology in it. And I said, why not? That's exactly what we're relying on, right? And that's the sad reality is we can't have an honest discussion. Even in our national rhetoric, people don't talk about the issues. They talk about what makes them feel better, right? About, hey, this is what's going to happen. They talk about things that are not a priority for people, or not going to move this country forward. And to me, there are certain things that should not be political. Infrastructure is one of them. We should have the best in the world infrastructure, regardless of what we're talking about. Best in the world education. And we're arguing over, what books we're going to allow, right? It's ridiculous. Especially in the Bay Area where we're literally one of the most educated, one of the most forward-thinking people in the world.
I have a question for either member from Earl of Milpitas. Asha.
More young guys. So, I know this is tenants and landlords, rights and all this other stuff. We always say it like tenants' rights. So it's never there by landlord. But even if you go to landlord's right, it changes to tenants' right. Do you guys have any bills that will stop? You're not talking about, that would leave your house go along there, but real tenant that you had to decide, after 2 months, I'm not going to pay anymore. And then it's worth saying, I call the city and you can't change my life. You don't change the lives. You can't even any of these things. But you guys listen to pass anything so that I don't have to go to court for months and tie my money because they don't have to get to that. But you guys are working on that because we have rights too.
So obviously there are I make a distinction between community landlords, smaller landlords, and the corporate landlord. And a lot of the worst abuses have been the large corporate landlords that don't have a stake in the community. And that is where you really need to have tenant protections. But my view is not to shaft the landlord. What we should be having in cases where people have fallen behind in their rent is an emergency program where they could be let money or have some assistance so that they don't reach the point of eviction. And as I said, New Jersey had this kind of program, and it dramatically reduced the level of evictions and the level of people being unhoused. And it's a vicious spiral because once you are evicted, once you are unhoused, a lot of times it's hard to retain your sense of hope, your sense of pride, and that people often become even more vulnerable. And so we want to prevent that. And if we have that, then it's not the landlord that's getting stuck with the bill. It's all of us in the community saying, this is an investment we want to make in people and keeping them housed.
So I also talk about tenants' protections just because, to be completely frank, the balance of power is in favor of landlords, point blank. There's no walking around for that. But the reality is that as a person who, one day wants to be a homeowner and so forth, obviously balance is important. And small mom and pop landlords are usually defined as people who have 4 units or less, right? And oftentimes we see a lot of people invest in a property for retirement to potentially earn some income when they are retired or to pay for their kids' school and so forth. And I fully respect that and I fully support that. The larger landlords, They have associations. They have a lot of regional associations as well as statewide associations. I will say the California Apartment Association sounds like it's for tenants, but it's for landlords. And there's the Regional Landlords Association, right, that are a little prong of the California Apartment Association. They have a lot of different support models and systems and best practices for good landlords, right? And at the same time, you do have a lot of other avenues and resources to be able to work with a difficult tenant. And I will say personally, those folks, and we've seen videos where people are in a home for a year plus, and it's not fair to that small mom and pop landlord to have to navigate the system, take time off work, be able to figure out a lawyer, try to issue papers and do it the legal way. And that is very frustrating, and that is something I am concerned with. And so for me, it is about a balanced approach. But I will say right now, in today's point in time, there's not enough rights for an average tenant.
Right. To keep things on time, we're trying to get Congressman Khanna to his next event. We need to leave at 7:30. As you can see on the clock, the wall kind of short. So speed round, just one question from each section. Thank you.
Representatives, we have Robert from Fremont with a question on funds for public housing.
So I had a question about efforts to build public housing, either federal or state level, where it's owned and operated by the state, to streamline that process. For example, Alex Lee has a bill that he's proposed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Alex Lee's bill on social housing is terrific, and I've supported it, and I think we need to have that at a federal level and have an Office of Social Housing where you can have mixed income individual participating in public housing. And the problem we had is the 50s and 60s is we built public housing with only a certain income class, and that led to problems of class segregation. And really what we want is an integrated option for people who want to live as part of social housing. Doesn't mean that you have to participate. There are people who still want to have beautiful single-family homes. Great, go do that. You want to live in a rent, go do that. But we should give people the option of also having social housing, and that's, I think, one of the best ways of having public housing. And so I'm a proponent of that.
It's definitely, you know, SB 555 is the first social housing bill of its kind in the state, period. Right? It was successfully passed and signed by the governor, very proud of that. And other efforts have failed in the legislature, right? And the honest truth is that SB 555 is probably the path forward. And building off of that, specifically, I work with 150 different stakeholders, nonprofits and for-profit developers. And the context is really balanced and it's focused again on moderate, low, and extremely low income cooperative housing, developer/city. And SB 555 will also identify where are our resources. Right now, there's a lot of siloed operations happening, whether you're talking about a city or a county or a state, or even at the federal level, which we know is a problem when you're talking about government. Here's the thing about SB 555. It sets the path forward to a social housing authority. Mm-hmm. So most cities, most counties don't want to be a landlord. They just don't, right? And it would actually make sense for that to happen. And I want to talk about how nonprofit housing developers aren't always the answer. We had federal funds coming out called LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credits, that were offered up to the state treasurer's office in all the states. And the state treasurer would give that money to those developers, those nonprofit developers that have to work to keep a housing project for affordability for about 25 years. But after the 25 years, they can do whatever they want, right? And the reality is that with that LIHTC funding, there was one nonprofit here in California that evicted over 1,000 people. Alameda County, Santa Clara County, Napa, you name it. And those are the things that we need to correct. And there is a difference between social housing and public housing. Public housing, the reason why it has the bad rap is because it was, as the Congress member said, specifically focused on a particular income and a particular background, right? We know that in unsightly parts of communities and places other people never wanted to live, right? Social housing incorporates everybody, mixed income, moderate income, if you're middle class, as well as lower income. And it's regardless of where in a city, because they just need a plot of land, if you will. And it is governed largely by the tenants. So the tenants have a right to make decisions collectively, like a vote, right? And that is the fairest way to make it with the priority of vulnerable communities. So the disabled community, the senior community, women and so forth. So I think that SB 555 is the answer to build out and the foundation that we are setting up. And I'm very proud that it's the first social housing bill in this state.
Representatives, I have a final question from Mayor Montano from Milpitas on affordable housing for seniors.
First of all, welcome here to our beautiful city, Congressman Senator Wahab. My biggest concern is our aging population. Many seniors call me and they say, Mayor, the rents just went up and we are on a fixed income. I would like to find out what you can do to help us. And I will let you know that in Milpitas, we are very unique. We have a housing authority. And because we have a housing authority, I'm pretty sure that there are opportunities that where we could build affordable housing for our senior, for our aged population. And I'm asking the both of you, what can you do to help us get that funding to build affordable housing for our seniors? We need that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mayor Montano. Thank you for your leadership over so many years in Milpitas, and your sensitivity to these issues. The reality is that seniors are hurting in our community. And that's not just because of housing, it's because the Social Security benefits have not kept up with the cost of living. And as food prices have gone up, as gas prices have gone up, as rents have gone up, their salaries have not gone up because so many people are relying on Social Security and are relying on Medicare, which does not cover dental, does not cover vision, does not cover hearing, doesn't cover long-term care. So the first thing we need to do for our seniors is strengthen Social Security and strengthen Medicare. And that means having Medicare cover dental, vision, and hearing. It means lowering the Medicare premiums. That's why I support Medicare for all, a strong Medicare for all, and it means making sure that we're increasing Social Security benefits. And when people say, how do you pay for it? I said, we've got all the wealth in the world in this district. I don't understand how people in other parts of the country aren't for taxing wealth. I said, no one has more billionaires in their district than I do. And I keep saying we could tax them so that we can make sure that people have basic dignity. And that is the most important thing, in my view, for our seniors. But in addition to the increasing their income, we need to make sure that people like you, city councils like you, have the authority and the opportunity to cap the rents if that's what you deem is necessary. Right now, we have a law in the books of California that doesn't allow that. It doesn't allow cities to make the decision to cap rents. That law, in my view, has to be overturned. And we're all going to get to vote on it. There'll be a ballot proposition on the California ballot that would say that we should be empowering our cities to be making that determination. And so that they can protect seniors, that they can protect disabled in homes or protect the vulnerable. Let me end with this, and then I'll give Senator Wahab the last word, and really appreciate partnering with her on this town hall and working with her and to incredibly competent staff, and those, of course, are working in the years ahead. You know, I see so many, I'm so heartened that we had so many mayors and city council people here from all over our district, because this is not something that any one branch of government is going to solve. You know, you're not going to solve it just with a federal program. You're not going to solve it just as a mayor. You're not going to solve it just with the state legislature. It's going to take all of us, including the excellent nonprofits and community groups and all the citizens, to address this issue, to make sure that we're making some progress. It is one of the black marks, frankly, in our community. There are a lot of great things in our community, the way we get together in terms of our diversity, the way we respect each other, our innovation. The fact that we do not have affordable housing for so many people. There are people in our district, 40, 50% of their income is going into rent. And then we have so many who are on the house. Is really, in my view, the central challenge in this district, in this area. And I am just really grateful that all of you came out to participate, to share a conversation. And I'm hopeful that collectively we can start to make some progress on this. And I certainly am committed to supporting good ideas that you have and amplifying them and trying to find resources for them. I know the senator is as well. And I think if we come together collectively, that we can make some progress on this issue. So thank you very much for participating. With that, I'll give that.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for having us in your city. I do want to highlight that there's a Bay Area housing bond that's on the ballot. Hopefully, it's going to potentially bring in Santa Clara County $2.4 billion and Alameda County $2 billion. And $4 billion is set aside to create a new regional program to fund affordable housing construction, and most importantly, preservation. Again, people keep talking about building. Building takes long, right? And we need to keep people housed today. And the reality is, it is tenant protections. It is making sure that people stay housed for a longer period of time. In fact, 49% of the homeless population in my county that was asked, what would have prevented you from being homeless? They said 49% said rental assistance, right? And with that, I really want to highlight this, because when people are evicted from their homes, they get a foreclosure letter, or whatever the case is, to leave within 3 days, right? And I want to talk about the Great Recession, because the Great Recession, which affected my family, and more than 10 years later, I'm not a homeowner, right? The Great Recession, and I always say that the banks were bailed out twice. They were pumped with cash, right, because they were too big to fail. And they also kept the assets of the millions of Americans that lost their homes. And then they sold those assets, right? And millions of Americans had to start from scratch. And that is not fair. And when I talk about preservation, that's the most important thing. In Hayward, when I was on city council, Hayward is one of the few cities that has rate control and rent stabilization. It's in the state of California, there's about 17 to 20 cities that have rent stabilization ordinances. And I want to highlight this because rent stabilization only affects multifamily complexes that were built before 1995. Okay, so it's those big apartment complexes. They're not the single family homes. They are not the townhomes, duplexes, condos, or anything like that. These are corporate landlords. And the fact that we're not pushing that more is a problem in every single city. And in Hayward, I was able to expand rent control from 1,000 units to 10,000 units in 6 months. And we literally dropped our homeless population by 22%. With a stagnant rent increase year over year at 5%. The city of Alameda is at 3%, or CPI, Consumer Price Index. That is the measures that your local city councils can push forward. That's what they should be doing, let alone affordable housing and much more. So I really want to highlight that this is an important issue for me personally, as the only renter in the Senate. We are part of the Renters Caucus. There's a handful of us in the state legislature. We have people like our congressmember who genuinely want to help lift Americans up, and that is through the economy, that is through housing, and that is through innovation. And we are the Bay Area, and we can get it done. We did. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
No, it's okay.